Is RAG dead? Based on all the posts, you might think so. The biggest argument is that larger context window is killing RAG, and while that might be true for needle in a haystack, what about when you have a lot of needles? Or a lot of haystacks with a lot of needles? Stay with me here as we dive into the eval I'm working on called 30 by 30, the proof that RAG isn't dead. But first, let me just tell you that this video is part of my work on Engramic, a BSL open source license inference engine that focuses on long-term contextual memory. I'm a big fan of open source software, but I'm an even bigger fan of our license where companies with more than 250 employees help fund the development and support of smaller companies through a reasonable commercial license. It reminds me of that old folk hero of the past that stole from the rich and gave to the poor, and was ultimately assassinated for his do-goodings. Clearly I'm talking about US Senator Huey Long. Before I go into the 3030 eval, let's talk about the signal to noise of a context window. The best data you could add to the context window is 100% the perfect response. In other words, there is 0% signal loss, and the LLM needs to simply serve the text verbatim. Now let's start adding other chunks, and still more chunks, and as we do, we are decreasing signal to noise. And while we can still pull a needle from a low signal to noise ratio, it's hard to pull many needles. This is an important concept. As signal drops, so does the LLM's ability. All right, now on to the 3030 eval. I use this document, which has 30 different HR roles at a company. Not long ago, when context windows were smaller, this was a difficult challenge for most RAG systems, and it was typical for me to get 10 or 22 roles, but now with larger context windows, it's a fairly easy eval to pass. It's time for a bigger challenge. That's where my thinking of a 3030 comes into play. Right now, I'm asking about 30 roles across one document. But what if I were to ask about one role across all 30 documents? Assuming retrieval is working, RAG systems that can achieve 30 roles in one document should be able to fetch one role across 30 documents. The signal of the context window is essentially the same because the retrieval step should call out the irrelevant text. With large context windows, it's a different story. Since you don't call out the irrelevant text, you now have many needles in a context windows whose signal just dropped dramatically. In this case, maybe down to something like 3%. The 3030 is my next eval, and I look forward to sharing with you the results when I have them. But for now, let's take a look under the hood and get familiar with how the system's set up to be successful for the 3030. Engramic is designed to be efficient for scale. It doesn't submit a large amount of text to the LLM, and instead uses a more elegant design borrowed from the video game industry. Back when graphics cards weren't as fast as they are now, artists would make multiple versions of a model, low, medium, and high polygon. When an object was far from the camera, it rendered a low poly model, and when it was close, it rendered a high poly model. This kept overall polygon counts low. Engramic does something similar. I'm using a document with 30 HR roles in it, but that's too big for Engramic with its current settings, and I'm only getting a partial list. So to solve this, let's make the equivalent of LODs through training. I'm going to ask Engramic to train on each section on the document, and as it does, it'll make memories of each conversation. I'll speed up the video so you don't have to wait for each call. Now that we're done, Engramic is able to display all the roles because of the more efficient memories it created. And who's going to train Engramic on all your documents? Well, that's for a future video.